Happy Friday and welcome to the weekly Bustle Stitch edition again, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ahad, and today me and William will try to discuss and understand more about acting on the information that you know and not getting paralyzed and not moving at all because of information overload. William brings his unique perspective on actually not understanding what I mean because I come from a data perspective, and he's like, I just move. I look at people and they just want to move. So I don't know what you're talking about. But in reality, I work in an industry where companies and organizations refuse to move till there is data in front of them. And I am also surrounded by people who prefer to have complete information or the illusion of complete information before they make a decision, such as pursuing a new travel plan or pursuing something to buy, etc., etc. You want to know everything. I argue that I don't think that is the case. You can never get everything. William agrees, but William brings his perspective into it with some really great analogies and anecdotes. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you enjoy it as well. Without further ado, here is the first voice note. I've realized that the voice note feature in Messenger has actually changed for Android, and we cannot send voice notes longer than a minute anymore for some weird reason. And I still haven't gotten the fast forward in my Android app. I think you have it in your Apple. I think that really adds another dimension to this conversation. Now I'm recording this offline, and then I will forward it to you using the Messenger app. But this is the start of the conversation we want to have, William, on acting on the information that you know. Now, I'm a big fan of this. I'm a big fan of incomplete information and decision making under uncertainty. And I think you would agree with this as well a little bit, that life is all about dealing with incomplete information, right? We cannot sit back and wait for all the pieces of the puzzle to be complete before we can take an action. We have to realize that, okay, we need to take an action now. We need to do something about it. We need to move. I also recently have become more of a mover than a thinker. What do I mean by that is, at first I used to always think a little bit, debate a little bit, and be like, okay, I will make an action once I have a good plan ready. But now I'm just like, you know what? I don't care. Let's just move and see where it goes. And it has really changed my outlook on life, because I now suddenly realize that, wow, I did not know I had the capability to do these things. I will give you an example of this new startup idea that I'm working on, and suddenly we already are getting very close to the first flow of the first MVP. And I'm like, wow, I did not know that I could actually get this working so quickly. But apparently I can. Apparently, instead of thinking about it all the time, if I would have taken the time to actually develop something and focus on creation, maybe I would have done something about it. And it has been a revelation of sorts, because I was always of the guy that, no, it's not my expertise, and I will just think, I will just create the outline, I will execute and delegate the plan, and then people will be the ones who will develop it better than I can, because yeah, they are better than me at this. But what I've realized is I can do that plus actually start moving it by getting the right people in the right places, and start moving quickly. So this startup idea was the first one. I also have another league idea that I'm working on, because I'm a gamer and I really enjoy gaming. And I was always struggling, oh, we need money and we need sponsorships and we need to do something. And people are telling me, just run with it and see how far you get. And then if you need money, then you can start asking people for money. And I'm already starting to work with this, and I'm like, wow, I did not know that I could even get this far myself without even asking for another help or paying someone else to do it. So all of this really made me realize and made sense a little bit more about this point this article was making, that, oh, look, you need to really run with it. You need to really like start acting on the information that you know, instead of focusing on getting completion. And it's a light bulb that went into my head when I thought about this. And of course, there's this cliched line that also was mentioned, which I personally don't agree with, but I really like it when I see it. To be fair, I think I do agree with it, because I have seen people around me who I go like, how? And the line was basically that there are people who are less smarter than you and they are more successful just because they started moving instead of thinking. And I do resonate with that. I do genuinely resonate with that, because I do think that there is an element of overthinking that comes in certain people who try to think a lot. And in certain cases, it's a blessing to be a person who just doesn't think much and just get shit done. And I'm really curious to hear your opinion on this. I'm really curious to hear how you feel about this. Are you a thinker? Are you a doer? Because I know you also have your own photography thing that you do, but on top of that, you still like to help out clients on the side. You've mentioned a lot of clients that you worked with. in our podcast as well. So I'm really curious to hear your opinion on this. That are you a mover, doer, or are you a thinker? And what do you think about this idea of trying to move with the information that you have instead of trying to wait for the complete picture to show up?
Good morning, Ahad. Well, good morning from where I am anyway. I think where you are, it's like 6 p.m. or something like that. Um, yeah, this question of acting on incomplete information, I have thoughts. I have thoughts about it because I think the question you're asking is really kind of a question about confidence. Um, and because there's no human that has ever lived that has acted on complete information. We are necessarily limited in what we know. Even the people who know the most, there's stuff they don't know, and you know we we always act on incomplete information. The question is, how do we feel about the information we know? Do we have the confidence that we need act uh, to act on what we do know? And you know, I don't know. Generally speaking, I am I'm in favor of taking your first steps as soon as you can muster the confidence to do so. And I think for a lot of people, and me, I mean, me in particular, I think that I've done, through most of my life, I have done basically everything late. I walked up to the edge of some opportunity, and I'll stare over the edge for, I don't know, 10 times longer than I should before I decide to jump and just hope that the parachute works or the paraglider works or whatever. Um, and so a lot of my adult life has been marked with trying to deliberately ask myself, am I am I hesitating to move because I don't know something that I need to know, or am I hesitating to move because I just don't feel confident enough yet? And the funny thing about confidence is that, you know, to a certain extent, if you act like you have it, you'll kind of develop it. That's not true always in every situation, but it is often true, and it is a little bit like a muscle where if you get used to acting confidently, um, around some opportunity or some task, you'll get better at doing it in other opportunities and other tasks. So, I mean, that is what a lot of my adult life has been. Um, at the same time, though, oh God, man, we just this is like the age of bullshit. This is the utter age of bullshit. Everything is bullshit somehow. And I think that this piece, these a lot of these ideas are used by some of the shittiest people to proliferate bullshit. And I mean, I think that there are some sort of like classic case studies on what I mean here. Um, but like, what happened to like Kickstarter or Indiegogo or fuck even um, oh God, Etsy, even Etsy, like the core mentality under all of so many of these platforms is like I have an idea and I want to make it real and I want to get started before I have all of the stuff that I need to get started really, and I'm gonna use these platforms to do it, and like they turn they turned into exactly what you would think when like kind of shitty people get their hands on this idea that like they can do something that they know nothing about if they can just convince people that they can do it. So I mean, like, it's all it's all confidence. It's like all some kind of a big confidence grift. Actually, I don't really know what a confidence grift is. I just assumed. Uh, I'll Google it later. So yeah, I mean, as as with pretty much everything we talk about, I'm going to fall really firmly into the camp of like, there's no really clear answer to this question. It's it's a mix of really good things, and it's a mix of really really bad things, and we'll have to like look back in 50 years to decide whether or not it was good or if it destroyed society and the planet. I'm actually I'm a little I think I'm a little more on the side of it's going to destroy the planet than I am on it being good, but I don't know, time will tell. Certainly good for me.
Hey, William, I love already what you're talking about because it also resonates with me a little bit. So I completely agree. I think I also want to become a bit more like what you're describing yourself as. So I was always the kind of person who would move first, even without gathering the right information. And sometimes it, not really sometimes, a lot of times it would always blow up in my face because they'd be like, a little preparation would go a long way. And yeah, that is correct, right? So as soon as I feel like I have enough information to act, I would act. Sometimes I would also just act and be like, let's just act and let's learn throughout the process. I think that's also quite underrated. People want to gather everything they can. They want to gather all the information. They want to understand everything before they take the first step. I'll give you a very good example. I like to build things, so I like to bring ideas. I want to open up a restaurant, and I already have the idea in my mind of what I want it to be. I think it's going to work really well here. I've run some numbers to see, okay, how much will I need to stay afloat and everything, just the bare minimum. And I'll say, then let's see where it goes. But the people around me who I ask, like, okay, what do you suggest? Do you think it's a good idea? What do you think? Should I go to the bank for money, or do you want to invest with me? You want to partner with me, or something like that? And of course, you're asking them for money, so they become a bit more hesitant. But even if you don't ask them for money, you just tell them, what about the idea? What do you think? Almost always people ask me, but where is your business plan? What did you think of? What's your forecast trend for the next 6 months? Did you correct competitor analysis? I'm like, why does all of that matter right now? I know it's important to get money from people. I understand that. Okay, if you're putting your money and you really want to know as much information as you can. But if I'm just asking for advice, do I should open up a restaurant or not? Or should I move or not? Even if I want to risk my own money, why do I have to respond to these questions like, where's the business plan? Only then I can tell you and I can give you advice. No, you can also give me advice on the idea. You can tell me how you feel about it. I don't need to accept your advice. You can just tell me. And I feel like this whole data driven, in my career, I am a data consultant. So in my career, literally, I make a living out of giving people more information to work with, right? So it is, you can say it's also funny coming from me that I'm advocating for, like, not saying that we're like, try to act without data, or I try to act with more incomplete information than you need to. But I just feel like some people just get too bogged down in the details. And even now, slowly as I'm maturing in this role, I'm understanding more about this role, I really challenge people when they talk about completionism, like, can we get all the data? Where is it missing? Where's the depth? And I'm like, yeah, I really would like to caution you to not get too much into the details, because it's pointless. The value that you want to drive from your data is enough. You don't need 100% to get the value. You will get the value even out of 80% of the data. You'll miss some customers, but that's fine. You were targeting 0 customers first, and now you're targeting 80 customers out of 100. Yes, those 20 customers, I feel bad for them that we miss out on them, but you're targeting from 0 to 80. That's already a win. Take the win before you really get bogged down to the details of getting the 100. And I feel like, to bring the conversation back to what we were talking about, that's what I feel like a lot of people do. They get bogged down in the details. And when I talk to you, you're not that type of person. So it's very interesting to hear your opinion on this. And it's very interesting to hear the last example that you shared about some people taking inspiration from what I also say, are just taking advantage of the fact that they want to look like movers and doers, and take advantage of this pop culture references of act and don't think, and like act on what you just know the information on. And they just go on these platforms and they just start selling ideas without having any framework or bare bones even ready, that you're going to make it. And then of course you have seen these scams, and you have people who take advantage of the system. They give you something that is not advertised accordingly, it's false, etc., because they just talk the talk and they don't really need to walk the walk, because in this era of so much money, people sometimes even get sold on ideas rather than a real product, because they're like, oh, it feels like you can handle it. Here you go, some money. And that emboldens some people. And I'm quite curious to hear what you just said right at the end, that you think you fall on the other side of the prediction that it's more bad than good. So I do want to know a bit more in detail about what do you mean by that.
I think we need to try and pull this apart a little bit. Um, and I think it's going to be hard because I don't have definitions for the different parts in isolation, but this topic of acting on incomplete information, I think it's just like almost meaninglessly big. Like I said, no one has ever made a decision on complete information, and so there are some ways that there's some like ways that somebody might advocate for acting on incomplete information earlier, um, which I think are pretty universally good. Um, but I think there's also some uh, ways and areas where, when advocating for incomplete information, it's almost near universally bad. And what I think, um, it would be super helpful if you have ideas for how to define these two, because I think that they matter. Please, if you have ideas for those definitions, just spit them out. Maybe they already exist, and I'm just not smart enough to know them. But if we're talking about in a place like, oh, I want to start a garden, or I want to bake a cake, or I want to get into a romantic relationship, or I want to join a bowling league or something like that. You know, these are situations where, um, yeah, just sign up for the bowling league. Just throw some shit in a bowl and start mixing and see if it turns into a cake. Like, the worst case scenario here is you don't like bowling, or your cake, is flat and tasteless, or your romantic partner, it turns out you guys don't really get along, and you don't stay together. These are situations where I think many people, for a variety of cultural reasons, sit and hesitate, like, almost in like an introverted, what if I'm not good at it? Like, it's all very much a personal, a hang up with oneself, um, whether or not they should just go. And I think that people will sit and they'll pine over the details. How do you do this? How do you do that? Um, what if this? What if that? And they don't get started. And I think that, for me, when I was describing this history of doing everything late, that's very much the kind of thing uh, that I'm talking about most of the time. Um, like, my partner and I joke, Michael and I joke that he asked me out 4 times or 3 times before I said yes. And I probably wanted to say yes that first time, but I had to keep thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it, and I didn't need to. The advice I needed at that individual level at that time was, it's fine. You're going to be fine. The stakes are not that high. Just move. Just do it. You know. And so, in a situation like that, at that scale, that's the kind of act before you really know, before you really know all the necessary details, that I'm more or less universally in favor of. I mean, obviously, barring situations where somebody maybe has a more difficulty with impulsivity, that they oftentimes get themselves into messes, and in that case, maybe those people actually need to be told to, hey, slow down. Like, maybe some therapist would tell them, I see you keep getting into the same problematic pattern for yourself, and it's because acting impulsively, whatever, But I think that there's, in at that scale, in those kinds of situations, that's almost universally good advice. But on the other hand, at a larger scale, I think that we have an ethical responsibility to meet a higher standard of information before we act. The question isn't just, do I know what I need to know to act? Do I know what I need to know to act now or later? But should I act at all? Um, and I think so. So when we're having these conversations, I think that is a part of the question that is not basically ever asked. I mean, if somebody wants to start a restaurant and sell hamburgers, the question is always, well, can I get people to buy a hamburger, with my idea? When maybe the question is like, can I make a hamburger that anybody should want to buy? You know, and so I mean, I think that's where I see it as kind of complicated, and I think that's where my age of bullshit comment comes in, because I don't think anybody really asks that question, and so often, particularly among like entrepreneurial tech types, you end up with basically entirely this question of, uh, can I do it and not should I do it? And so like the whole acting sooner, acting later, do I have the complete information? It's all just a shortcut to like get to what is the foregone conclusion that definitely, if somebody will give me this money, I should take it. And I mean, based on a bunch of our conversations, I don't think that you would believe that. you know, um, that is not the most important question to be asking. It's certainly not the one that is, uh, like ethically at the top of the list.
Oh, I love this voice note. I loved it because you are going in a direction I am enjoying as well. I think for the fact that I will try to tackle this part by part, because you said so many things and I want to really like pull the thread on each of those things, but I know that we're going to make it into a hot mess if we try. So let's take it part by part, and let's see which ones you like the most, and you can reply to that one first. But you told me three things which I could understand. Number one is, for you, do I know enough, or no one can act under complete information? That is a fact. I agree with you. But I think why I'm asking this question is because most people are under the conclusion or under the assumption that they can gather complete information thanks to the age of information overload, right? Because now data is available on every single goddamn thing that you can think of. People want to capture more and more. And as I said in the previous voice note, I work in the space of data. So I know firsthand, not just individuals, but how also companies act, that I'm discussing and debating with my stakeholders. Hey, shall we start moving? And they're like, no, well, these few customers are still left that I can't identify. I need to identify those. I'm like, but why do you need to identify out of 2 million customers, a couple of 100,000 even? Why do you need to focus on those when you're capturing 80-90% of the rest? Let's just move. At the end of the day, what is your goal? Is your goal truth, or is your goal action? If your goal is truth, then sure, figure everything out. But most companies don't want to work under that axiom. They work under the fact that, hey, I want to make more money, I want to move, I want to build products that people might not need, but I want to make them want it. A bit of a segue and a kind of a Easter candy drop that I did here for the other topic that I want to discuss with you, which you already mentioned. But that is the thing. So people have this false illusion of information now, because they are in the age of information. They think they can get information on practically anything. So nothing is enough now. Back in the day, you needed one slide to convince a stakeholder to go for a project. You needed a couple of statements to make your friends understand something about science. You needed very few information, and credibility and exploration was part of the process. Now you really need to make people believe every single thing. You need to show people a lot of information. And it's not just in the business world. I can also give you an example from the academic world. Back in the day, if you look at how science was done pre-empiricism, it was all about people like, hey, I have this idea, let me test it out. No literature review, no nothing, no knowing how many people have done this before, no care at all. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. That's how people also independently invented new things in mathematics and physics, because they were just taking where the mind took them. They were like, you know what, I don't know, and let me figure it out. Nowadays, if you start researching in academia, they keep asking you the first thing, okay, has it been done before? Do a literature review of a couple of pages or hundreds of pages and find out who has done this before or something remotely similar to this, and then build on top of that. And I'm like, why do you need to know what people have done before? They're like, no, because we need to know if there is review, we need to know the literature before we can build something. And I think that in academia, if that exists, that tells you how society has also functioned and placed itself, that it's all about the information that you can gather more and more and more, even if you don't need it, even if it's useless, you just want more information. So that's first part of why I think we need to have a debate on this, that how can we convince people to act on incomplete information, because they're under the illusion that they might be able to get complete information. And we need to convince them and make them understand, hey, look, you will never have complete information. As you already said, you will never have a complete information. It's not possible for you to do so. You're capturing a lot of shit and you're hoping that some of it gives you the answer, but that will never be true. Some people are under the assumption that with AI, they're like, if you can feed it enough information, it can predict everything. And that was one of the things that I also discussed on the podcast with the previous guest. And he was under this impression that he was like, no, I think it's possible. And I said, I told him that I don't think it will be. But he said, no, it will be, because that's how predictions work. So I am not in complete belief of that system, but I respect it if the person can make something like that happen. Anyways, that was the first point. That yes, we need to tell people complete information doesn't exist. They are under the illusion of complete information, and how can we convince them that, hey, look, we need to talk about this. We need to make you understand that there is no such thing as complete information. You're just under an illusion. Second point, which will be a bit more briefer than the first one, because the first one was mostly a reply to you. Second point is, if you know that the examples you gave about bowling and everything, I really enjoyed those, because what I hear from you is remnants of myself as well, how I take decisions. And to be fair, when you talked about the people who should take therapy and who are very impulsive, I felt a bit, I wouldn't say attacked is the right word, because I don't think it's anything negative, but I felt called out, because I was like, hey, I'm that person. I always jump in. I want to try these new ideas, and my wife and my friends are all like, is there a business plan? Is there a thing? Is there this? Is there that? Did you make a website? Did you make this? Did you make a logo? Did you think of a name? I'm like, I don't care. I'm just getting in. I want to do something. I want to build something, and I will see later if it's worth even pursuing. So let me build first. I get in first. So the question to you is, how do you know when you have enough information to act? I think that's a better question then, right? When is it enough that you know that, okay, now I know that I can make a decision and I don't care where it goes, because at the end of the day, you tried your best. Third thing that I want to talk about is the last part that you said about, I would like to do it this way, I could do it this way, but then I forgot that, should I do it, right? It's also a very famous saying in AI also, and in Silicon Valley, because people are creating a lot of things. They're thinking, could it work? Would it work? But they keep forgetting the question that, should it work? Or should it be even existing? And a lot of people argue that no, people don't think about that. People don't think about when you want to open a restaurant, or you want to build a new business, or you want to work instead of 40 hours a week, you want to work 80 hours a week. People forget to ask the question, should I do this? They keep saying, yeah, could I do this? Can I make this work? Can I find a new gig? Can I do this? Can I do that? Can I build something better? Can I do this? Would I like to do that? But none of them answer, should I do that? Because should is a question of responsibility. Would and could are very easy, right? They're tangible. Could I do this? Is a very tangible thing. I'll find information, I will look at the practicality, and I can do it. Would I like to do it? Look, I have the time, I want to build something, I feel like I should do it, I would do it. But should I do it makes you think a little bit more deeper, because you're like, should makes you want to challenge yourself. And no one likes challenging themselves, in my opinion. That's why it gets less traction. I completely agree with you. We should be asking every single time that, should this work? Should that work? Should you want to do it this way? Should you want to do it that way? Right? Sometimes, do you even need to do this? Like, do you even need to capture this information? Right? Should you even begin this project? These are the right kind of questions people need to ask, but no one does. So I'm very curious to hear from you, because I completely resonate with you, but I don't know much about it either. I'm on the same camp that I'm a person who likes to do a lot of things. So even I'm the wrong person to say that, hey, yes, you should ask, should you? I'm right now running 3-4 concurrent projects at the same time. People are asking me, are you crazy or something? And I'm like, yeah, because I want to do these things. I want to try these new things, these new startups, these new projects, having conversations, working, earning money. I want to do everything. Should I? Probably not, because it's not sustainable. But I don't want to go deeper than that. So I would love to hear your point of view, and not about me per se, but generally about this should question. And what do you think, and how do you think people can get better at asking these should questions? These are three things I really want to discuss with you, and I'm really curious to see what you say about it.
Okay. Yeah, I think I see where you're coming from. You're sort of approaching this question less from a totally general standpoint, or maybe even personal standpoint, and more from a maybe like a corporate or a business standpoint, where um, you know businesses they need a they need a competitive edge or something, and there's this kind of uh, there's a I don't know, people have this kind of like faith now that if you get all the right information, you can't help but succeed. And I mean, I think that you might be spreading that mindset out a little bit too broadly. I think you might have a sampling bias. Um, I mean, like, who are these people that you're that you're getting this information from? And I assume that they're probably clients and you know um, influencer type people that you might follow, and and the other followers of that personality. And in my experience on kind of like on the ground, I mean, when I'm helping a business, it is almost always made up of like, I don't know, 12 people, and they're probably like selling pizzas or mowing lawns or something, you know? Um, the businesses that I work with are just way more like grounded in their community and in their like geographic area. And at that scale, in my experience, fucking nobody is asking about data. in fact, if anything, way more often than not, I need to slow people down and say like, "Hey, why do you think that this is a good idea? Do you have some kind of data or some kind of reason to believe that this is a good idea?" Um, and so, I mean, I don't know. I think it's an interesting point. I think it's a really interesting point that there is at least in some parts of, in some parts of society, there's a swing like way too far in the other direction. Like the pendulum has swung too far in some areas and has barely started to move in others. I think that's a pretty good point, and I would agree with you. I mean, I think that there is a lot of there are probably a lot of situations, especially in larger businesses who are targeting a lot more potential customers, where you know we're talking about a return on investment where the difference is in you know like a 5% difference. If they could 5% difference on the return of investment, which is significant, but not very significant if like fighting for that other 5% is preventing you from you know getting the other 95% that you could if you just fucking moved. And so I mean I think you're right. How do you know when you have the right information? I have no idea. I mean I think in some degree, in some ways, that goes back to the question of confidence. I mean, there's an aspect here of you have enough information when you um, feel like you do, you know. Um, but I think that also um, sort of rests on not rests on. I don't know how to say this. I think it also sort of calls out another topic that I don't think that we've really touched on, and that is risk. I mean, I think um, when we're talking about deciding when you have enough information to act at any scale. If we're talking about should I ask out this person that I think is cute, or should I? um, place this ad in this magazine, or if I should, you know, whatever, at whatever scale we're talking about. Well, you're like the whole reason this is a question is because of risk. Um, and I think that there may be a cyclical thing going on where um, we have more information, and so it's not just a matter of we have more information, so we think we can get all the information, but having all that information also really highlights how much risk we're taking whenever we decide to move, whenever we decide to do something, you know. And I think that maybe we could think about we could maybe think about like seatbelts as an example. I don't think that there was a time when prior to seatbelts being like a standard thing in cars. I don't know how often people thought about the dangers of getting into a car accident. You know, um, but over time we gathered lots of those. We gathered lots of those statistics, and uh, people learned about them. And now, when somebody gets in a car, I think have you have an idea of the risk you're taking in a way that you probably didn't before. And now, I mean, what is it to put on a seatbelt? Like, I don't know, it's not the perfect example, but there's really nothing in the way of you just reaching for that seatbelt and buckling it. Like you have basically all of the information you need. That was that wasn't a great. I don't know. That wasn't a great analogy, but I think it maybe kind of highlights my point. Like the I think that the bigger issue here is risk and the tolerance people have for risk. So, if you want people to move uh, and decide to move before they have met some other threshold, what you have to do is you also have to increase their risk tolerance. If you want, if somebody, if you want, if somebody wants to, uh, if somebody wants to, ask out their crush or something like that, they can either gather more information by like in some, you know, school child way, like get like a friend to like, oh, do they like me? Reduce the gather more information to reduce the risk that that person says no, um, or lower their risk, or lower their increase their risk tolerance, and be okay with being rejected, you know. So I mean, I think all of this is I think all of this is kind of ethereal. Like there is no such thing as having enough information. Um, I mean, actually, I don't know. There might be something to be said about statistics in general. Like, well, I don't know. I'm not going to get into that. But uh, it, if those are our questions, we either increase the data or um, increase our tolerance of risk.
And that was it. Thank you so much for listening to my conversation with William. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I think this was a wonderful conversation. And I'm looking forward to having William again to debate about another interesting and nuanced topic down the line. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you next time.